30. Morning, everyone. Welcome to our special council meeting for today, September 17th. I'll confirm that we do have a quorum because all of council are here, and so is our municipal clerk. We'll start the meeting at 9:30, and I'll start off with the territorial land acknowledgement. We respectively acknowledge the township of Alma-Calderwood is located on the Mississaugan Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississaugan Anishinaabe. Township of Alma-Calderwood respectively acknowledges that the Mississaugan Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure the health and integrity for generations to come. On to number 3, that the agenda for the special council meeting held on September 17th, 2024 be approved. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favor?
That I would like that my portion of we had to
Then is that for?
I will mention that in the litigation, for the litigation, the pecuniary interest.
So you're okay. You are going to mention it in the pecuniary interest. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, all in favor? Motion is carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, the general nature thereof.
Mayor Logo, I'll be passing a declaration of pecuniary interest to Madam Clerk. It has to do with agenda item 5.1, particularly the third item in 5.1, but the library board is intertwined through the audit, so I will just leave it as 5.1 as it is in the whole.
But you will be participating in
Not anything to do with the library board.
not anything to do with the library. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Moving on to number 5, and it is 5.1, the 2023 audit financial statement presented by Richard Staninga. Is that correct? I should know it. And Richard, if you're ready to go, then we'll start. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning.
I think you're coming in loud and clear. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm here to present the draft audited financial statements for the municipality of for the year ended December 31st, 2023. And within the agenda, of course, there's the detailed financial statements, but my plan is to go through first our presentation, which summarizes the detailed financial statements, and then as well too as I go through this presentation, hopefully I address some of your questions, and then as well too I can take questions at if there's any left later on. So first off, on the next slide, within your detailed financial statement is our independent auditor's report, and that is our report on the financial statements. The auditor's report remains consistent with the prior year. It is a standard 2-page document, and what we've reproduced here is what we consider to be the important paragraph that, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township at December 31st, 2023, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that is your standard, clean, unqualified auditor's report. 2 things to note here. When we say consolidated. The numbers in the presentation, when we look at it, include both the operations of the township and the library board as required under PSAB reporting, and the fact that you consolidate all controlled entities. And then next as well too, when we talk about the Canadian Public Sector Accounting standards, that is more commonly known as PSAB, which is different than how you budget. So I'm going to go through and try to highlight those differences as well. So hopefully we can bridge the numbers you see here with the numbers you have in your accounting system. And then next, we come to a summary of what we do, and as auditors trying to gather our audit evidence to produce our opinion on the financial statements. As well, first off, we do look at minutes of council, looking for their approval. We then gather evidence as well by doing substantive testing, and then trying to prove the balances that are within your general ledger. And then as well too, we also look at the way your system processes things, and the documentation and related control testing for revenues. So your inflows and your outflows being your payments to third parties, and then as well to payroll and how you adjust things through the way of journal entries. Then on the following page, you can see where the audit is at. The audit is complete pending council approval of the financial statements, receipt of the signed representation letter, and receipt of the legal letter that was sent out to your solicitor previously. Overall, there were no significant difficulties encountered during the audit or changes to the initial audit plan or disagreements with management. But what you will see on the final point there is there were a number of changes in relation to public sector accounting standards. That there were actually 5 changes to the standards, but the two that could impact your financial statements the most, and the one that did, was the asset retirement obligation, as well as the financial instruments. And those are the two that impact most municipal financial statements. The other ones relate to foreign currency, as well as financial disclosure, and those type of things. And you will see, when you look at the numbers, you will see the impact of the asset retirement obligations on the municipality.
Here, Catherine, you have a question?
Just what are financial instruments, since you just said that's going to
Okay.
impact us?
So financial instruments are items that can be measured and it can be more liquid than, let's say, other assets like this building. So, I mean, the biggest thing for municipalities is if you had a lot of investments that are based on the market. In the past, under PSAB, you would just record those at the original cost base, whereas now they need to be recorded at market. And then as well too, that would also include then adding in a new separate schedule, a statement of remeasurement gains and losses. So fortunately for the township, that one did not impact you. It just resulted in some additional disclosure in the notes to the financial statements, but you don't have any investments that are based on the market. You have some GICs which are recorded at their principal value plus accrued interest.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. And then as well too, there was one unrecorded difference in relation to the loan that you received a number of years ago for the joint EMS fire hall. That debenture ends at a point in time during the year, and the amount of interest accrued on that from the last payment to the end of the year was not accrued, just because it then doesn't tie into the way you budget. So the total amounts there were 23,000 in the prior year and about 22,000 in the current year. So the net impact on the township bottom line was $916. So we're not looking for an adjustment. We're just have the obligation of letting you know that that is the one difference that wasn't recorded. So now we come to looking at some of the numbers within the municipality and where things ended up at the end of the year. So first we come to financial assets. So these are assets that you have that are either cash or can be turned into cash, ideally. So, and of course, the first two are of course fully liquid. So you have the main one being your three bank accounts, predominantly being the general bank account, your development charges, and your water bank account are the three that make up most of the $7.8 million. And you can see there that is up from the prior year, just about 400,000, a little over 400,000. And as well too, that's mainly as a result of your reserves increasing. You have a couple of GIC investments that are recorded at the cost value plus any accrued interest. This year, you have people that owe you money in the way of accounts receivable, and you can see there that it's down almost 200,000 from the previous year. And at the end of last year, you had the Public Works facility that you were constructing in Centerton. And of course, with that construction, there was a lot of HST rebates that you were entitled to. So as a result of that, and just some timing of some rebate claims, your HST receivable was down by about 250,000 year over year. So that explains a lot of the decrease as well too. This year, though, you did have an ICIP grant for the water well, so that increased your receivables. So that caused that to increase, as well as the amounts owing from water users also increased, so that caused that to go up. And as well too, there were some lower amounts owing just from user groups and from the county and the First Nation as well. So those are the major components within the receivables. And then next you have the taxes receivable, which you can see there did increase by almost 300,000. So that is that represents the amount the ratepayers owe to the municipality. So that includes both the township share, the county share, and the school board share. And as well, but keep in mind though, you pay the county and school boards every quarter, regardless of whether you collect from taxpayer X. So in that case, you are the banker. So then overall, you will see there that you won't see there, but I will tell you that the percentage outstanding at the end of 2023 was 9.33% of your total levy, which still from the Minister of Municipal Affairs puts you in the low risk range, because you move beyond the low risk range at 10%. Last year you were at 8.3%. So although dollar value you went up a fair bit, it's 1% increase. And then when you look over the last few years, back in 2020, you were up to 9.6%. So it just does vary. And I think too, with coming out of the pandemic, collection procedures for most municipalities have ramped up in the current year, trying to I believe you were scheduled to do some tax sales in the current year. So that is becoming more prevalent again in just trying to recoup your taxes. Yeah, that is one that ideally though that does require a fair bit of staff resources to monitor that and ensure that you're collecting your money. So then the following slide gives you an idea as to the 5-year trend on that. And you can see there that the green bar, your cash bar, has been the largest over the last 5 years. Next, we come to who you owe money to. And the one thing to note, when you look at accounts payable and accrued liabilities, similar to why your HST receivable was down, you also had some accruals last year for the construction of the new public works facilities, causing and that was in there as well. Whereas this year you did have some additional increases related to trades and accruals, as well as more monies from developers, and causing that to go up as well too. There was one later accrual related to trades over a railway crossing issue. So that amount has been recorded in these financials. And those are the major components there. Next, we come to a unique line called the Deferred Revenue Obligatory Reserve Funds. So this then represents your Canada Community Building Fund or your gas tax, as well as your parkland levies that you've collected and your development charges as well. So these are items where you've collected the money, but you just haven't spent them in accordance with the agreement. So that means you don't get to recognize the revenue until you do. So they're just sitting in this account until you spend it in accordance with the agreement. So of that $2.4 million, 2.1 million relates to development charges and 238,000 is the Canada Community Building Fund, and parkland levies make up the balance of 73,000. So these are the monies that you can utilize moving forward into 2024. And then I'm assuming you probably already have used some of them. But yeah, so these are different than other types of fundings that you receive, and they need to be broken out and shown in that manner.
Just in your opinion, should we be using this money?
It all depends on if you can meet the requirements of the related legislation, right? So with the development charges, there's normally a study that shows you what the charges was based on and what you can spend it on. So until you meet those requirements, then you're not entitled to use that money. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a timeline that you're aware of that we should be using that money?
Well, for the building or the gas tax, it gets looked at every 5 years, I believe. And the development charges, then they will take a look. Is it every 10 years now? They moved it to that you need to do the analysis. It was 5. I think they moved it to 10 and therefore the consultant will look at that. And if you haven't spent what you're going to, then it may impact future development charges as well. And now we have your long-term debt, and you have 2 debt instruments outstanding. One for the fire EMS joint facility in Roseneath, and as well to the new debt you incurred last year for the Centerton Public Works Yard. So those almost 2.9 million outstanding in the public works, and about 1.89 related to the Roseneath Fire Hall. So that's fairly consistent. And now we come to the biggest impact on the changes to your financial statements as a result of the PSAB changes. So this is the asset retirement obligation. So this then, the PSAB changes then came into effect. So therefore, there were 4 conditions you would have to meet to record the liability. First off, so really, if there's any what they consider a contaminant or something within a facility that you're obligated to clean up at some point. Doesn't mean you have to do it today, but at some point you're obligated to clean up. It will cost you future resources. It's right here in the notes of the financial statements, the 4 conditions, which I don't remember off the top of my head. Yes, there's a legal obligation to incur retirement costs in relation to the tangible capital asset. A past transaction has occurred that gives rise to the liability. It is expected that you will have to give up future economic benefits or pay for it, and you can make a reasonable estimate that can be made. So what you're finding in most municipalities is it either relates to asbestos in facilities that you own, or doesn't impact you because you have county-wide waste, but landfills would also fit into there, and it replaces the section on landfill liability. So for the township itself, you're greatly impacted due to the the age of a lot of your facilities. Because of course, when things were constructed really early before asbestos was made, well, then those buildings, if you still had any of those that, unless you did renovations, they may not be included. And then by about early 1980s or so, you were almost precluded from using asbestos in construction. So that what we're finding is that there's just a lot of buildings that were constructed. What we've seen is in the 50s to the 70s, whereas utilizing asbestos in the construction process, either in insulations or any type of coating on pipes. We've seen certain types of asbestos paper under flooring. All of these things get looked at, and then the idea here is to come up with a liability to estimate what it would cost you to remove that and or remediate it. But keep in mind the liability, like you can sell a building still with asbestos as long as you make the proper disclosures that you wouldn't have to do anything with it. So, I mean, there was a list of a number of buildings that your consultant had arrived at, like the Alnwick Community Center, the Centerton Community Center, the Finello Community Center, this building, the office, the Grafton Library, the Haldeman Arena, the Fire Hall number 2, the Roseneath Public Works, stations 1 and 3, the Vernonville Community Center, and the Wicklow Heritage Church were all identified with various amounts having asbestos. And so really, and the 2 largest ones were the Alnwick Community Center and the Haldeman Arena. So so therefore your consultant went through, estimated the amount of asbestos, and then what it would be then to remediate that. And then those impacts are then shown here in the financial statements. So therefore, the initial increase to now this is where it gets a little unique, to your additions to your tangible capital assets and your initial asset retirement obligation was about $7.4 million. And so that number has been calculated. It was calculated now, and then we discounted it back to this January 1, 2023. And then the difference between the $7.4 million you see that was added to your tangible capital assets and the $8.4 million is the estimated time value of money on that liability to increase it over the years until you think you might remediate it. So that's how that number has been calculated. So when we take a look at some final numbers, the impact of this does not show in your operational results. It's all tied up in your tangible capital assets, so it doesn't impact your operational surplus. And I'll show that moving forward. And I guess what it does highlight for you as users, yes, like you do have buildings that, so you're aware that do have some contamination. And if by chance you do some work on it, you need to be aware of that so that therefore you're always conscious of it, so that even when you're issuing contract, let's say if you want to do some work here at this building to make the contractors aware that there is the possibility you will have to abate the asbestos in those type of buildings. And as well too, I guess moving forward, you have an idea of some of your community centers and whether if you're renovating or anything, keep that in mind too, that you do have that obligation as well. So
Any questions on this? Rebecca?
It's not a question for our auditor, but is there any duty for us? Because we've had contractors in working on those very buildings in the past few years. It's just something we have to think about because we have had work done.
Good point. Mike?
Yeah, to you, Mayor. So this was actually one of my questions. You kind of cleared it up for me, but so for that $7 million or $8 million for asbestos, is that something that we would have to look at over how many years? Or do we just, do we just worry about it if we have to renovate? Is this something that we need to do and we should have been setting money aside how many years ago, let alone starting today?
Yeah, I mean, unless you plan on disturbing it or renovating something where right now, then under various health and safety acts, you would have to do that anyways. But if you plan to just continue to use the building as is and no intention of doing anything with it, well, then you may not need to set anything aside.
Okay.
Or,
Thank you.
or you could come to the conclusion too, that you have a building that there's just too much there to do, and whether you need to continue on utilizing that facility as well. That's at least not now you have an estimate of what it might be to factor that into future decisions as well.
Mayor, so how did we come up with that estimate? How did they come up with that $7 million?
So
Pardon me, go ahead.
Councillor Ainsworth, so that's where we brought in the company to do the study.
Okay.
And because of the auditing process, that was a requirement. And therefore we had that, and then those numbers were shared from that company to this process. So again, just to reiterate, what's identified is that if you needed to do remediation. So as an example, we spoke last council meeting about this building. If you start to open up walls, then you're going to be into remediation and identifying the cost of that. And that's what this is identifying. But same thing, if you decided that something was surplus and you sold it, then it affects this. This is not about coming up with $8 million. This is the identification that if you were to do something with your existing buildings and you had to remediate, that you would be looking at this cost. So if we were to just pie in the sky with the Haldeman Arena and or community center project, if the building was torn down and a new facility was built, then you're looking at lesser costs. So this is identifying what is risk cost to the municipality. So that'd help.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
Up to your Mayor Lobo, it'd be interesting to kind of deviating from this but when you mentioned Wicklow Church, that is a replica of what was put there. And so I wondered how that's just a minor building, but it'd be interesting to have a look at that report at some time to see where the asbestos is and the timeline of when they used the asbestos, if it was from the 50s to the 80s. So I don't know if Richard
I'm
could.
not sure if I understand that can be done or not, because I expect it's an estimate.
oh yeah, yes,
Yeah,
this
there's
whole thing.
actually no study done, or pardon me, crawl,
Well-
open up the rafters to see if there's asbestos there or not, correct?
Well, and sometimes that they will just take a small sample of, in some cases, we've seen where they've just scraped something off the wall to see what's in the drywall and the drywall compound and send it away for testing. Yeah, so they will do it if they can do it rather without causing any type of huge issue. Yes, they will take samples. I'm not sure. I don't remember your report specifically, but I have seen that done before. Yes. And just further to Councillor Stover's,
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Stover's
I've
point
been
out,
called worse.
that is the smallest liability on there. It was less than $70,000 for the church.
Go ahead, through your mayor, just for clarity, so that church is a replica, it's not an existing building, and that's has nothing to do with you, but I think that goes back to the company to say, that building was built well after asbestos was even part of any construction materials, so the identity of it, I think, is probably a question for the company that did that study. when we look at what we consider opportunity costs. So what we're looking at, and I think the overall identification here is that probably the province does not want you to keep old infrastructure. And when you look at what the cost is to keep it, to remediate it, versus the cost to rebuild it, I think that's where this comes into that entire thing. But you know, again, retrospectively speaking to what is considered, this is applied to the balance sheet. Again, it's not directly related to our operating line.
Right.
Okay, let's keep moving. Go ahead.
So then in total, you had 17 million in total liabilities this year, and you can see there in the following slide. Of course, the way the last bar on the slide stands out, as we already just discussed for the asset retirement obligation. And then as well too, when you take a look at your net financial assets on the next slide, you will see here that because of the impact of the asset retirement obligation on the following slide, you can see there, so you went from being in the black to in the red just because of the asset retirement obligation. So if that wasn't recorded in 2023, you would have been in the black for 900,000. So this then takes your financial assets, subtracts your financial liabilities to give you the negative $7.5 million. But then further down in the financial statements, then the non-financial assets is the other side to the asset retirement obligation. So when you look at the following slide, you will see here that your tangible capital assets increased by a fair amount year over year. And a lot of that is related to the $7.4 million of the other side of the entry to the asset retirement obligation. So you have the asset retirement obligation, the liability we just looked at. Of course, that's attached to a tangible capital asset. So the other side then is to add it to the value of that asset and then depreciate it over the time as well. So that's how much was added there. And what I like to say is you really had $2.5 million of real cash asset additions that you incurred, and we'll take a look at what those were a little later on. And then you had about $2.3 million in amortization, so that's causing a reduction there. And next you have some prepaid expenses and some inventories of supplies, and a lot of that does relate to the unused sand and salt at the end of the year. A lot of that was remaining on hand versus the prior year. So of course, these are all considered non-financial assets because you don't try to turn these things into cash. You use them in your regular provision of services to ratepayers. So that's why they're considered non-financial assets. And then when we move along to the following slide, I said you spent about $2.5 million on as I said, what I consider real cash additions to capital assets. This slide here then shows you about the 2.2 that you actually spent on assets that were put into service. Majority of that relates to roads and bridges, predominantly roads work that you did within the municipality this year, accumulating to about a little over $1 million. You spent $257,000 on three fire vehicles this year. As well too, within buildings, the largest component there was the finalization of the Public Works building in Centerton for about $556,000. You did some work at the Grafton Fire Hall, as well as at the ACC and the arena and the town hall, and as well in the Wicklow Church. Machinery and equipment relates, some of that is playground equipment, as well as purchase of a tractor and loader and rake, road steamer, and some extrication equipment for the fire department. And then as well too, so these are the assets put in service, and then you'd spent about almost $331,000 on the upgrades for the water well, and they are considered to be assets under construction, so they're not put into service until the project's actually complete, and you're using it, so that therefore you have about in total 338,000 in invested in that project that will be, as I said, put into service when you do when it is complete. And then on the following slide, you will see the 5-year trend. You can see there kind of during the pandemic, like most municipalities, additions were not as great as they had been. And in 2022, you will see the impact of the Centerton Public Works Facility on your total assets. And this year you can see there that actual cash additions to TCA were a little higher than amortization. Next, we come to really what's left over and being the accumulated surplus for the municipality. Within the detailed financial statements, you will see that the accumulated surplus is $23.8 million. But on this page, you will see that here are the components. So and the majority of your $23.8 million is tied up in your $17.8 million in your capital assets. So this is the net book value of your assets. And then we take away obligations you have on those assets. So the first one, which is consistent with prior years, is the long-term debt you have both on the public works facility and the fire hall. So that comes off the value of your in essence the equity in your capital assets. And then this year as well, the $8.4 million of your asset retirement obligation is deducted from the value of your capital assets as well. So leaving on net equity of $17.8 million invested in capital assets. As well too, at the end of the year, the township had a small deficit after recording the late accrual for the one liability there for the railway crossing of 21,000. And then when we take a look of the $23.8 million, it's the $6 million you have set aside in reserves that increased by about 487,000 year over year. And then as well too, you can see they're broken down into various components. And I guess the one thing, just to get it to fit onto one page, within other, there was a bit of an increase there, and that was as well too the proceeds on the sale of the one property sold, Shadow Drive, I believe is, and then therefore that got set aside in the recreation reserve. So that's causing a bit of a part of the increase in your other. And as well too, you were able to set aside more some funds this year for fire vehicles. So the increase in the fire there. And as well too, you utilize some of the water reserves for the capital project. So therefore, as I said, about 6 million of the 23.8 are monies you can utilize moving forward. And then as well too, when we look at the following slide, you will see there the 5-year analysis of your reserves. And really the general reserve is the one that includes most of your surpluses and items over the years. Next, we come to the consolidated statement of operations. So
And I
then,
think before you finish there, the general government, is that where the money went when we sold the property?
no, that one went into the recreation reserve, which would have been in the other column.
And the other, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just add what the other is?
Yeah. So that majority of that is recreation, parks and rec. Quick answer would be anything that doesn't fit into the categories, but yes. So parks and rec, library, building and bylaw, and then community policing, cemetery planning, heritage accessibility, Roseneath revitalization. now, okay. Reserve for Nawatan Sanctuary, hopefully I pronounced that right. And as well too, just some planning and some, history book money, Grafton History Book Reserve Fund, things such as that. So next we come along to, there's the consolidated statement of operations. So then what this page does here, gives you a high level look at your annual surplus on a PSAB basis being the top part. And really with, then it shows the actuals, for the last 2 years. And really when you look at the budget column, you will see there that under PSAB, you were budgeting for almost a $500,000 surplus. But as you know that, when you're setting your tax rate, you're not aiming or sorry, you're not allowed to budget for a surplus or deficit. So then when we take a look at the items, the reconciliation piece below, so these are the items that are different between PSAB reporting and how you set your tax rate. The biggest one, or a lot of it all does relate to either tangible capital assets or transfers to and from reserve funds. So, and as well, in your case, principal payments of long-term debt under standard accounting practices, principal payments are not an expense. So therefore they're not included in your PSAB. But of course, for setting your tax rates, you need to raise that money. So therefore, it's also part of the difference. And therefore you can see there that it's the amortization, the additions to capital assets. And what you will see here on your purchase of tangible capital assets, they were down about $1.2 million. And then as well, your transfers from reserve and reserve funds were also down a fair bit as well. The two normally go hand in hand since you didn't spend on the capital assets, you didn't need to draw as much from the reserves. So really what you will see here, the new line is this line called accretion expense. So that is the time value of the asset retirement obligation, taking it from the initial $7.4 million to the $8.4 million at the end of the year. So that is the time value of money on that liability. So that was not budgeted for. As well too, there was some additional amortization causing it to be higher than last year. So those are the two major impacts of the asset retirement obligations on the financial statements, and we'll see that moving through. Overall, when you take a look at the next slide, you will see there just the summary. Overall, you've been fairly consistent year over year. Assets and revenues almost being the same. And next we will take a look at of your revenues and your revenues on a PSAB basis directly in the financial statement. So that is on the next slide. You will see there that property taxation remains your largest area of revenues. Unfortunately, although your subs and write-offs were both up, they were up a little higher. So as a result, then you had an additional 30,000 there. Your user charges represents charges that you collect. The biggest one being water charges of almost 400,000. Building permits, that's part of the variance year over year. They were down from the prior year and down from budget, causing some of the reduction, as well too with planning and zoning fees are also within there, and they were down from budget as well. And the prior year, recreation fees, they were up about $47,000 for rec facilities, so that was good to see that coming back in, as well to fire calls for the municipality were down from both budget and prior year, causing an overall reduction from both the prior year and the budget in that total line. Government transfers includes your OCIF funding of about $720,000, your ICIP funding for about 248,000, 522,000 for OMPF, as well as some monies from both the county and the First Nation. Penalties and interest on taxes, your taxes were up, so therefore you were allowed to charge more on penalties and interest. You utilize $93,000 out of your development charges. Large portion of that is for water, small portion for library and fire building. As well, Canada Community Building Fund, you use that for roads, work and capital. And this year you had a nice large gain on sale of your assets. As I said, you sold the Schweno Drive property as well as the old fire hall, and net of expenses. Sorry, you also sold some surplus equipment. So net of expenses and any type of net book value related to those meant you had a gain there of about 385,000, and then as well you had some other revenue, and the major component within there was your interest income with the higher rates and the consistent bank balance. You had about $322,000 in interest income this year, and then as well too you had some other grants and realized about 56,000 from the municipal animal shelter and that wind up. So that those are the components that go into others. So you were slightly over budget on your revenues. And then the following slide gives you an idea as to the components, and you can see there that property taxation is the largest piece of the pie. And then we come along to the expenditures. And I think there was just one change from the one you originally had. There was some additional amortization.
Something you want to ask before we?
Yeah. So the last slide.
Yeah.
That one, would that encompass,
Yes, yeah, so I mean, so the 7.6 million that you almost billed, that is the township portion of what was billed for 2023. And then within the penalties and interest on taxes, the money that you earned on the outstanding amounts is in that line. So when the top line is just billed taxes township portion for 2023, and the amounts being charged on arrears is in that line called penalties and interest, the 227,000. Yeah, so that line is purely penalties and interest on taxes. And within the other line is the 322,000 in bank account interest that you earned. So, yeah. So that 227 is all related to taxes. Pardon me? Yeah, interest on, yeah, penalty, yeah. Right, so now we take a look at where the money went to. So this, as I said earlier, within your expenses, there was about a little over $1 million in relation to the accretion, causing the increase there, as well to $370,000 in amortization of the asset retirement obligation. So that was about almost a little over $1.4 million in additional expenses that weren't in last year or in the budget that are there just due to the asset retirement obligation. So in the final version of the statements, unfortunately, when you got your slides originally, $200,000 of the amortization related to a recreational property got grouped into the top line of general government. So you will see now that when you look at the revised slide, actually general government was only over budget by about $5,000. So
so that's what happened.
yes, yeah. Overall too, so there was some additional there's about $100,000 of amortization and accretion in that line, but as well too. There were some reallocations related to insurance from the previous year that weren't there as well too. You save some money on contracted services in the administration department, which really offset the increases due to the amortization and the accretion. Protection services, fire was up by about 400,000, but still, the accretion and the amortization for the ARO accounted for about $360,000 of that 400,000. So, and just because of the nature of the fire halls and the age of them, also within that line is a little over $1 million for your OPP contract, and as well to contributions to the conservation authorities and building and bylaw are included there. Your transportation services were actually under budget. You had a number of assets that were fully amortized in 2022, so your amortization was down. Your vehicle repairs were up, as well to winter control was down just based on the conditions. And of course, too, these are done on the calendar year, so it means we're looking at the winter from January to March, and then not the winter season. It gets split up for the financial statements. So so therefore, yeah, with some amortization being down and the winter control cost being down, which then coincides with the increase in your prepaid expenses we saw back on the other schedule of having more sand and salt left over. Environmental services relates to the water, as well to materials and services and consulting were lower than budget there. So that's why that is below budget. Health services represent the activities of your cemeteries. And you will see now too that the recreation and cultural services is about $200,000 and higher than what was there because it came down from the general government line. So of that variance, a little less than $1 million, 913,000 of that was related to asset retirement obligations, accretion and amortization. As well too, there was some additional money spent on the arena building maintenance for about $34,000, causing the majority of that. And then as well, your planning and development, very close to budget. And then as well, just a bit of a switch there, based on when you had people on staff versus contracted services. So you can see there about $1 million over budget, but as I
I
said,
don't understand the recreation and cultural services. It
okay,
looks to me in 2022, we were 1.1 or $1,010,000, and the budget was $1,071,000, but somehow or another we spent $2 million.
yes. So, but 913,000 of that relates to the accretion on the asset retirement obligation and the additional amortization of the new ARO assets. So really it's of the $1 million change, 900,000 is related to just the new standard change. So then the balance is related to operations. Right? Because I'm not sure if you recall, a lot of that list I ran through, all the community centers, the arena, they all, for municipal financial statement purposes, they all fit into that line, recreation and cultural services.
So that's for the asbestos, when it comes right down to it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of it. Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Mary Catherine?
So to clarify, that would mean that next year's budget needs to have 913,000 or even a little more in it to account for that asbestos, or no? Like, what do we do at budgeting with that extra close to $1 million?
So, really that would come into when you do your regulation 284 budget amendment. When you're budgeting for your tax rate, you would only include the work you would do on the building. If you're going to do work on the building anyways, and you knew you had to fix the asbestos, if you're not going to do anything with that building, then you don't have to budget anything in your tax rate budget.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Like, let's say for this building, if you plan no changes, you wouldn't change your tax rate budget for anything to do with the ARO related to this building.
Thank you.
So then the following um, slide gives you the pie chart on that. And then on the next slide, we just take a look at the expenses in a different format. And really, this is where you see the impact of the AROs highlighted more directly. You will see within the rents and financial, you see you budgeted $2,100 and last year you spent $3,300. Well, this year it's $1,044,000. So I mean, of which $1,041,142 relates to the accretion or the time value on that. So that explains that variance. As well too, there was $370,000 in amortization on your asset retirement obligation. So you will see there, and that's why amortization was higher than it was in the previous year. There was not quite as high as that change because of course there were some road assets that were fully depreciated at the end of 2022 that weren't there in 2023 to be amortized. So. And the following page gives you a pie chart of that. So that's a summary of where things are left off. And that is the end of my presentation. So I'm not sure if you had any further questions or.
Well, thank you, Richard. Appreciate you being here. What about the now for tomorrow? What portion is that?
Pardon me?
There's now for tomorrow in the presentation.
Oh, yes, that's our tagline. That's our tagline. So yes.
Okay.
Is that your logo?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time making it through today. I'm not conservative.
Does anybody else have any other questions or Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So on page 5 of this report, it's uncorrected misstatements.
Yep.
Can you explain that to me? There's actually 2 pages of them.
All right. So are you talking, what do you mean by page? Are you talking this?
So
slide?
I'm in the pardon me?
Oh, okay. All right.
Statements
All right. Okay. Yes.
that are basically journal entries that you have done for us or that.
Mhm. So, all right. So that page 5 on it, the one on our letterhead, that does represent that. I discussed that on page 4 of the presentation. That relates to the interest on the fire hall loan that it doesn't go till the end of the year because you pay that one twice a year. So that's the interest on that portion from the last payment to the end of the year that wasn't recorded in your books. And that'll be there every year. And then it's last year it was 23,283. This year it was 22,367. The net of that is the $916. So that amount is not adjusted. We're just letting you know that it's not material, but it's bigger than our threshold. So we have to tell you that. So that's really what that is, just making you aware that the net impact on your bottom line was $916 by not recording that, and therefore it wasn't recorded. And I think a few pages later on, you will find the actual journal entries that we did, and they are presented there as well. So, yeah.
So page 9 is like the amount remaining for further possible misstatements, 276,717.
Yes.
So those 2 pages.
So really, and that's all related just to that one item. So that has nothing to do with the journal entries later on. It's saying when we set the materiality for the municipality, we've estimated it at 300, sorry, we've set it at 300,000. And then, of course, the liability wasn't recorded for the 22,283. So that means really if there were anything else that came up, and then we had to add it to the schedule, then if it wasn't adjusted, if the amount remaining was less, then we would either say you need to make another adjustment or you won't get a clean audit opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a few more questions if I can, Mayor. So on your third document, consolidated financial statements.
Yep.
I want to go to page 32 of that document. And it talks about the library board and the library financials and the inability to do proper reporting because of the records. And whether we should continue with the board as is or freeze it. I would like that clarified. There's two pages, 32 and 33, I believe.
So I think, are you talking about in our audit report?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
the
And you'll find that in most library boards where there's a collection of donations, fees, and
yes.
fundraising. And a lot of those things over time have just included cash, which when you're working at a counter or running a fundraising event, the actual documentation can be somewhat limited. So what we're saying there is that what you've received is what has been recorded. We're saying really what we're saying is if somebody had dropped $20 in a donation jar, potentially that may or may not, since there's no invoice or anything issued for that, it's just a harder thing to audit. So we're saying we're limiting our audit work to what has been recorded. So it is, and that's common for most of the libraries that we do. So it's if somebody chooses to give you money or if you run an event, it's just hard from an audit perspective just to keep all the proper documentation and to prove all that. So that's just making you aware of it. What you've received is what we've audited. There's the potential or what we call a scope limitation as to whether if that donation actually made it into the library bank account, or if somebody scooped the tip jar along the way, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all we're saying. And of course, too, with limited staff at a facility, it's always hard. It's hard to have proper segregation of duties in that scenario.
So when you say that we should the question, the ongoing, like the concerned basis of how they're operating, like this whole thing throws red flags up to me as a counselor. And I just think it needs to be maybe more time taken or clarified exactly what all this means. Because if I read it 3 times, so I want to make sure that I'm reading it right. But to me, it's throwing a lot of red flags up.
Yeah, and really what we're saying is we've audited what has been received. We're not trying, we can't comment on potentially. And we're not saying anything did happen. We're just saying that we can't definitively say that it was, let's say the as I said, like the tip jar go missing or something like that. So, right, because if somebody wants to give you a donation over the counter, then that may or may, I'm not saying that there's no way from an audit perspective to find that documentation if it doesn't make it into the bank account.
Anybody else have any questions?
Um,
Go ahead, Mayor Council.
Just the journal entries, the number of them that there are there any things, recommendations, suggestions you have regarding that?
Well, historically, a lot of the journal entries, so really anything that is labeled BT by itself as a number are actual journal entries. And then when we come to items that are labeled BTU, so then these are all relate to tangible capital assets, which a lot of municipalities don't record within their books anyway, so that's or get adjusted. So therefore that's, and then of course, there's items as well too. Items that are called reclassification RECs. So then those are amounts that we've moved around so they fit in the right slots for us to do the financial statements. So those are items for us to make the statements work. They don't need to be recorded in your records. And then as well too, some of them also relate to the asset retirement obligation.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
so the BU, we can just say that's that, and we don't even need to think about that. So, but the REC, their reconciliations. So are you saying then that those are things within our municipality that we would potentially be able to improve? Is that what you're saying? Or what we're doing is fine, it's just that that's how it plays out?
Yes, yeah. So really, what we're saying, the ones you need to change are just the BT ones, and they represent really the
Okay.
first 2 pages. So really,
Okay.
that's not many entries.
Thank you, Mayor Kaufman. Any further questions?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. On the non-financial assets, it's called tangible capital assets, note 7. So just to be sure, that is the asbestos. So it's 31 million and change for 23 and 23 million and 22.
That includes the asbestos, but it also includes the original value, let's say, of the Centerton Public Works facility. So it's all added together. So every asset, every piece of land that you valued, the arena, all of your assets are in there, including the 7.4 million for the asset retirement obligation. So it's a cumulative number, less any type of amortization incurred over the years. So it's all
Okay.
inclusive.
And then I had one more, Mayor. There's also in our reserves for the water and the parks and recreation. 22 was 596 and 23 was 398 for the water. And then the parks and recreation was 654 and 23 and 412 for 22. Big differences.
Yeah. So in Parks and Rec, you utilize some for the playground equipment, but then the net proceeds from the Schwano Drive got put in there, so that when you take out I believe it was 50,000 for the playground you used, and then you put the net proceeds back in, so that caused that increase. And then for the water, I think it's part of the well project, that was
Okay.
your share was funded out of the reserve.
Anybody else have any further questions or comments? Thank you very much, Richard.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate it. I'll read the resolution we have here in front of us. It is recommended that the council and township of Allen Alderman enact as follows: that the presentation made by Richard Seninga, or close somewhere there around that, of Baker Tilly regarding the township of Allen McCollum in 2023 audited financial statements be received for information. Did I get a mover and a second? Moved by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Any discussions? Go ahead.
Through your Mayor Logo, this is where I would like it split. I'm not sure if Madam Clerk could assist with the wording on that.
What she's asking, if you can take it. About libraries. So,
Actually, going to defer that to Richard because the library statements are all intermingled within the presentation. Would it be appropriate to get to split this so that we're receiving the township's financial statements presentation separate from the libraries, or is it all one package?
can't separate. Mike, you had a question?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I know we're saving this for information here today. Excuse me. But I wonder where we might go with this later on and how soon we might look at this again. I mean, there's a lot of questions that we probably can't clear up here today.
I think you're right, Mike. I think Richard's provided the information that he has to the auditors, but there's probably still some questions from council that they'd like some answers to. What I would suggest is that we meet next week. And perhaps we can include some of your concerns in that, and then we can send it back to staff after next week to find out if there's more information. Questions.
Okay, thank you.
That's my thought.
Mayor Logo, I'll refrain from voting on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? So I think you should, if you have any questions, prepare them for next week's council. There's no sense in everyone in sending to staff because they might be repeats, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So we'll bring them together and give them to staff. They'll sort out the ones that are repeats and just whatever, and then we can go from there.
Yep, thank you.
All in favor? Motion's carried. Richard, thank you very much for your trip down. I'm sure you're heading back to Balsam Lake as soon as you can because it's nice and sunny
It'll
out
be a
there again
nice
today.
weekend. Thank you, Richard.
Better start voting for the Bruins, right?
Next, we have item 5.2, position recruitment in Northumberland County, and we're pleased to have today with us Linda Kay and Randy Barber, who is the chair of the West Northumberland Physician Recruitment and Retention Board. Would you like to come up and join us up here? Please and thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome to Alma Calderwood. Oh, okay. Excuse me. Yes, we're on.
Do we need to actually hold it or will it pick it up? How do we hear it? Okay, good. Well, again, good morning and thanks for letting us address you this morning. The last time we were here was January of 2023. So we welcome this opportunity certainly to update you on where we are. I would like to take a moment to thank Councillor Mary Catherine O'Neill and Community Representative Britt Poole for their board participation. They've been strong advocates for your community and the need for primary care in our community. I'll turn it over to Linda now.
Good morning and thank you. I'm glad the slides are up there. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll just talk about the fact that the board is 100% funded by all the member municipalities, and the funding is based on your percentage of population in your area. So Alma Calderman last year contributed just to almost $10,000, and that's about 11.4% of our total budget. So the board's mandate is to attract new family physicians to the area and to lead efforts and hoping to retain family physicians in our community. There's no doubt about that. It's been around. It initially started just as an ad hoc committee in 2001. And since then, and funding has always come through our municipal partners. In 2019, the governance structure was changed, and that structure was more formalized, and with the committee coming under the town of Cobourg, and we receive administrative support from the town of Cobourg. Each municipality has 2 representatives on the board. And at this point in time, the board consists of, I thought I'd let you know who's on the board. The mayor of Port Hope, Mayor Hank Kavitsky, their community rep, Peter Gabney, from the town of Cobourg, Councillor Randy Barber, and our community rep, Denise O'Brien. Hamilton Township is the deputy mayor, Larry Williamson, and community rep, Bob Gibson. Grammy Township, we have Mayor Mandy Martin and Councillor Sherry Hamilton. Plus, we have representatives from the Northumberland Hills Hospital, the Northumberland Family Health Team, and Dr. Fraser Cameron, who is our physician liaison. When I went back to look to see how many doctors has this committee recruited since 2001, and it's quite interesting to add that all up, and it's just under 30 physicians for this area, for the West Northumberland area. And in the last, since COVID, there's been addition of 4 new doctors, and we're in the midst of negotiating with another doctor right now to come to town. So, you know, since almost a doctor a year, some years a couple more than that, but that's what they've been able to do. There's no doubt about it. If we can get to this slide, yeah, physician shortage in Ontario is becoming critical. There's no doubt about it. And today they say it takes 3 physicians to replace 1. And it all depends on the size of the physician's practice, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. Because in years gone by, you recruited 1 physician that would take over a practice. But today's physicians coming in, they do not want a practice of 2,500 patients. You know, that practice has to be split down into at least 2 physicians, if not 3. So the docs today coming in do not want huge practices. So that is a challenge. They also say that 40% of Ontario physicians are considering retiring in the next 5 years. So that's pretty scary too, if we see that happening. And we're seeing that happening locally here. There's no doubt about it. If we could go to the next slide right now. And this came from the Ontario Health Team Northumberland. And in 2023, we have about 8,000 unattached patients here within the county. It's estimated. And by 2026, that could become over 20,000 unattached patients. So it's a real challenge when it comes to physician recruitment. There's no doubt about it. We know that there's at least 8 doctors that are considering retiring and within the next couple of years within our West Northumberland area. Can we just go to the next slide, please? So what are our challenges? Definitely a growing population and an aging population. There's no doubt about that. Changing expectations of grads, and I mentioned that already. New doctors coming in definitely want smaller practices. They're really looking at a work-life balance. They're also they want to come into new medical facilities. A lot of our family clinics have been around for a long time. I know the clinic I go to has been there since I came to Cobourg, and that was 41 years ago. So, we don't have any new medical facilities, and that's one thing docs are looking for coming into a brand spanking new facility. They also want to make sure that they are joining a family health organization, which we call a FO, which means they're a group of doctors together, working together that can support each other. They don't want to come in and start a practice on their own. They definitely don't want to do that. They want to make sure that they are sharing administrative support, that they're in with a group of doctors, that when they go on vacation, somebody will look after their patients and vice versa. So that's one of the other challenges, is that doctors today really want to join FOs. And sometimes FOs are full, which means you have to wait till a doctor retires. So, you know, a lot of the times over the past 10 years, especially, a lot of the doctors that have come in are doctors that are replacing doctors that are retiring, rather than bringing in new docs that are going to take on new patients. So the last time we saw that was in 2022, when 2 new doctors set up a practice in Port Hope. And they joined a FO, which was a small family health organization, and they set up a practice in Port Hope, and they were able to take on about 2,500 new patients when they came into town. So, which is great. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we have the challenges of the retirement of family physicians. As I said, we've already are anticipating up to 8 over the next 2 years, and a very competitive recruitment market out there. One of the things we know that only 30% of the grads coming out of family medicine right now, coming out of medicine, are going into family medicine. So 70% of those grads are going to other areas of medicine. So many of them, we had a doctor here that we thought we had recruited to this area, and he initially wanted to come in. He was also going to work at Northumberland Hills Hospital as a hospitalist. And in the end, he decided that's what he wanted to do. He didn't want to take on a family practice. So, you know, that sometimes is disappointing too. And it was disappointing to the doctor that was hoping to be replaced by that doctor. But that's up to the doctor and what they want to do when it comes to their work-life balance. And do they want to take on the role of being a family physician? As to us having a very competitive recruitment market, here within Northumberland County, we have 3 recruiters. We have one in West Northumberland, one in Quinte West, and one up in Campbellford. And the recruiter up in Campbellford also recruits for the hospital as well as family physicians. Down in Quinte West, you know, they offer their physicians $100,000 when they come into town. They give them that incentive. $20,000 a year, I believe, for a 4-year contract. You go a little further east, you go down to Belleville, they're offering $150,000 for a 5-year commitment to be down in the Belleville area. We're not saying money always is the best thing, because they've also had a lot of turnover down in Quinte West with physicians coming in, staying 2 or 3 years and leaving. But it is one of the things nowadays, with so many grads coming from being educated in Ireland, being educated in Australia, being educated in the US, they have debt. So when they're coming in and they're being offered a decent incentive to come and come to your area, you know, they look at that as helping to reduce their expenses and their debt. There's also been medical clinics set up where new docs, and I had a doctor I was in the midst of recruiting, but he ended up going there. But he was offered 10 years in this brand new medical clinic with absolutely no administrative costs. So he didn't have to pay for leasehold. He didn't have to pay for anything. He just walked into a brand new clinic, started his practice, and it was fully the clinic was fully ready for him, to totally turnkey clinic. And they've been able in that area to recruit 4 new doctors, because, you know, they're walking into a brand new clinic, everything's there, and on you go, right? So it's great.
Who sponsored that?
Some of that was private investment that did it. Some of it was the municipality as well. So it was a mixture of both, but they got private investors to build that clinic. And then the municipality is helping to subsidize those doctors. So, and it was the #1 priority in that municipality's strategic plan, was the recruitment of doctors. So they decided, okay, we got to really bear down and see what we can do in order to recruit doctors to our area.
And,
So,
excuse me, Mayor Logo, that was Belleville?
no, it was north of here.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Belleville. But Belleville, one of the things with Belleville, I read about Belleville, is they actually set aside, when they sold their utility, they set aside $6 million of that sale to go to a health fund. And so that health fund helps to fund the recruitment of their doctors into that area. I'm not saying it's all going to family physicians, but it's helping their hospital and such in their area for their recruitment and for supporting the hospital in that area. So, but yeah, there's a lot of things happening. And right now in our area, I mean, this past year, we did ask you all for a little more money for 2024, and that's gone into helping to double what we give our local docs when we try to recruit them, and we give them $20,000 relocation. So we're not, we don't offer them a ton of money. We just offer them what we can, $20,000 to help with their moving expenses and such. So that's one of the things under our new strategic plan that we've just drafted, and that was chaired by the mayor of the municipality, Olena Hankovitsky, and she's done the committee, which included also Mayor Mandy Martin, have done a really high level study on the recruitment that's happening on there, what we need to be doing here locally. And so the board will be meeting in October to set those priorities. We're also working with the Ontario Health Team Northumberland as well. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So our initiatives were to give more money to help with relocation. The other thing that happened this past year was the Northumberland Hills Hospital, as well as the Ontario Health Team Northumberland, brought us all together with Toronto Metropolitan University, and we did what they called design sessions. And those sessions are really talk about what are the challenges we're facing here in Northumberland County. They had doctors involved in those sessions as well to sort of look at what should be our focus in regards to recruitment, because not only are we challenged to recruit doctors, but the hospitals are challenged, and Campbellford Hospital was involved with this as well, to recruit hospital staff, be it nurses, be it RPNs, be it, people to work diagnostic imaging, et cetera. Recruitment for our hospitals is also a challenge. So anyhow, so everybody was at the table and we worked together on that. And there are about 5 priorities that came out of that in regards to what I know the OHTN wants to look at, in Northumberland Hills Hospital, and even ourselves. And it really, some of the things include looking at a better marketing and communication strategy. That's one thing when you talk to people, they're not quite exactly sure where Northumberland County is. And, you have to explain where Cobourg and Port Hope is, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, these are all things that we know we're going to have to do. We also have to look at what else can we do to enhance our recruitment strategy. Before, we used to be able to sell them a lot on quality of life, affordable housing, all that type of thing. We can't quite sell them that same way now. And even finding housing or rental housing is a challenge. Things like childcare is what people are looking for, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking at how else can we enhance those recruitment strategies, and what else can we do? One of the other positive things that's happened, and is happening all over Ontario now, is we have joined the Eastern Ontario Physician Recruitment Alliance, which mirrors the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. So this is great to be a part of it. One of the things that does is, number one, it brings the recruiters together and kind of working together a little more. I mean, we're all in competition with each other. That's the other thing, we all want to think about. We need to get doctors for our area, but how do we work better together? It also opens up the opportunities for us to be able to, because we will pay, initially we paid a $500 fee. If we continue with it, they're looking at asking us for $5,000 to be a part of this. But one of the things with being a part of it is the fact that it opens up the opportunity for people to travel to recruitment fairs in the United States, overseas. I mean, we have recruiters that are going to England and Ireland to recruit doctors over there, to bring them over here. So, and I don't think they'll be going as far away as Australia, but also other recruitment fairs across Canada as well. I mean, a lot of docs, we've had a number of docs come from Saskatoon in the last 5 years. So they go out there, they work out there, and then they want to come back to the East. So, and there's a big recruitment fair in Vancouver as well. So it's the fact that we'll be able to promote our area at those recruitment fairs. It won't mean that the recruiter I would be going, or our local recruiter would be going, but at least there'll be representatives there that can talk about our area. It opens a new database up to us to be able to list what we need for our areas. So it has some real perks in regards to bringing recruiters together, talking to each other. Even the fact that we're emailing all each other now, that we're asking each other questions, what do you do in your area, et cetera, it has been a real bonus even to myself, because at times when you're the only person and you're trying to figure out, trying to recruit, it can be a very lonely job and a very, difficult task, because you talk to a number of doctors, and in the 1.5, almost 2 years I've been in this role, I've talked about 6 or 8 doctors, and you think they're coming, and then all of a sudden they tell you they're going somewhere else. So you spend a lot of time doing that. Next slide, please. So for 2024, I probably have talked about some of this, our enhanced recruitment strategies, looking at increased incentives for our physicians. What other partnerships can we do? How can we find them housing, et cetera. We're looking at doing our enhanced marketing and communications. That's something else. We need to update our website, our video, et cetera. So there's work. We're going to look at that. And then again, supporting the Ontario Health Team Northumberland as they look at a countywide recruitment strategy, and working a little more together with our friends in Campbellford and down at Quinte West. Quinte West is a little different because of the way they're set up with their recruitment, but I still think it's good to look at a greater collaboration within the county, and also at some point getting some county money on the table to help with this. Many of the recruitment funds are coming from the upper tier, and I know the municipal ballot budgets are challenged, but certainly we've been very lucky. We've only have an overall budget of about $80,000. So when you think we have been able to over the years recruit up to almost 30 physicians, it's not a bad success rate, although it doesn't sound great, but considering the situation that we're in. But we've got to really look at how we enhance our recruitment strategies and what we can do to attract, and look at some other solutions as well. I mean, areas are actually starting to offer incentives to RPNs to get them here. So, that's something, nurse practitioners, to think that they're now offering them incentives to come to town. And how do we look at providing more outreach into the county? And I know that's something the Ontario Health Team Northumberland's looking at. How do we provide more outreach? Could we have a nurse practitioner clinic led somewhere? There's one down in Colborne, we know, but there is a need for that. So anyhow, so that's my side of things. And Randy, we can put the first slide up there, just talk about the municipal funding that's out there. As you can see, the town of Cobourg leads the way at providing 27,000 down to Crammy Township at 8,700. So, and I said that is based on population. So anyhow. Randy.
Thank you, Linda. Hopefully, you can see what a gem she is working for us, and she just goes nonstop, and it's hard to. The work she's done has been phenomenal, and beginning, I think, to pay some dividends. I would like, just before I go to what our ask would be, I wanted to let you know that. In the recent AMO conference in Ottawa, I was able to obtain almost an hour meeting with the Ontario Medical Association there in the Chateau Laurier, and have a heart-to-heart talk with them. Believe me, we are not alone in this. It's endemic basically across the country. Seem to be not realized by various levels of government, but the reality is that there's an acute shortage, and it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, quite honestly. And those that are there at the recruitment fairs, et cetera, at least will have a chance of getting people here. So our ask is quite simple, with and saying that Alderman Haldeman consider rejoining the board of the West Northumberland Physician Recruitment and Retention Board, and maintain your financial support of 9967 in order for the board to move forward on its work to recruit and retain primary care physicians. So that's our ask today, and we thank you for your attention and welcome any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll open it up for council questions. Go ahead, Mary Catherine.
So thank you for coming and thank you, Randy, for identifying that we both, Gret and myself, have been advocating for primary care, which was a message that I took from what our discussions were. You covered a lot of things, but you left out one thing that I think makes a huge difference is the ongoing work with the students during placement.
Right.
So that
Yeah,
is
that's
a
true.
huge and important factor. It's not a new initiative, it's been ongoing, but it's very important. And don't underestimate the 30 doctors. Imagine what Northumberland County would be like without those 30 doctors, just unimaginable. And then my last thing, when we're looking towards the increased cooperation, I think that is addressing things that really matter to us here, whether that's the Eastern Ontario Physician Recruitment Alliance. I think that's super important because that's going to be the first time we're going to have access to international job fairs. We've not had that in the past, so that very much matters. And then that the county and the cooperation through the OHT and the Northumberland Hills Hospital and the Campbellford Hospital, fabulous to see. We're definitely, in my opinion, moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Just a couple of questions for clarification, and then when you say that there's 8 doctors retiring, so when you're talking about the physician recruitment, are we talking about GPs and general practitioners? We're not talking
Yes.
about specialists, right?
Yeah, 8 family docs that have indicated they'd like to retire by 2026.
Okay. Can you tell me in all the years how many doctors has A&H got? Is there any doctors and any GPs in A&H? Any general
No, there are no
practitioners?
doctors here within your area. Oh, they might live here, but their patients, your residents go to see their doctors and most of the time in Port Hope and Cobourg. Or they could be going up to Campbellford to see their doctor, or they could be going down to Brighton to see their doctor. But as I mentioned earlier, doctors want to become a member of a family health organization. So they do not want to be in standalone practices. So that is a challenge. Fortunately, most of the practices are set up in the Cobourg Port Hope area.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just a comment or a concern, I was listening to the Crammy Council last week, and Crammy made a motion and they accepted it that they are going to form another committee just in Crammy, that they're just going to look after themselves, and it's a committee of council, so you have to either live in Crammy or you have to be a health specialist in the field. And the comment was made that there's already 5 groups in Northumberland County that is doing the same thing. They mentioned Docs by the Bay and all that. Can you tell me, so how many different groups right now are physician recruitment?
There's only 2 physician recruitment groups, which is Docs by the Bay and our West Northumberland group. In Trent Hills, the municipality there funds they fund the hospital $75,000 or $80,000 to support their recruitment up in Trent Hills. Their recruiter works in the medical affairs office at the hospital. So it's not a separate group. And basically they're tied to the hospital. It's same with Northumberland Hills Hospital. They have a medical affairs officer that deals with helping with recruitment of staff and also works with the students that come in that Councillor O'Neill talked about. We have a great relationship with Queen's University. Every year we have Romp Week where they come in for a week in June and excuse me. And then now we are associated with the new Lake Ridge Durham program, which is also Queen's University. And we've had the same students in twice. Those students have committed to become family doctors. They have committed to family medicine. So it's great. We've had the same students here twice. One is from Ontario. The other 2 are from out of province. But we do have a really great relationship with Queen's. We go to their recruitment fair every year. And certainly we're seeing their students. Actually, I don't know if you know, but Queen's actually owns a home in Cobourg. And when the medical students come, they live in that home while they're here. working at the hospital or working with our local family doctors. So that's great. They have a place to stay. They're here for approximately, depending, some are here for a month, some are here for 8 weeks. The ones we see are usually only here for a week, so we give them the best of the community while they're here. And so they learn more about Northumberland County and what we offer here. But yeah, that's what we do with those students. So the really, Councillor Booth, is only 2 groups, Docks by the Bay and ourselves. The others are associated with the hospital. So that makes sense.
Who's Docks by the Bay? Where are
Docks
they?
by the Bay is 20 West. So
Okay.
that's Brighton and such. And sorry, Mayor Martin hasn't advised us of that motion that was passed.
It would just happen last week.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
Councillor Booth, just you bring up a point that it seems like there's a whole bunch of us sort of
Yeah.
screaming around doing one thing or another. Pardon me. And it is certainly something that we're aware of. We're endeavoring to work closer together at this point. But if one was to project where we're going in the next year or two, you're going to see, I think, some type of a potential amalgamation of some of us, so that there isn't as many. The reality is, at this point, we're working very closely together, much closer together than we ever had before. And but looking at it from the outside, it looks like there's a whole bunch of people running around doing the same thing. So, but indeed, we're very careful on where we go and who spends the money and what to do. Thank you.
And that's a good point, because I guess to add on to that, and this is through
Yep.
to the mayor might be able to comment, I saw that there was a proposal at the county, that the county now has a resolution that they want a countywide physicians recruitment plan. That was from the warden, Brian Ostrander, and Lucas made that, and that's coming up. So they're getting involved in it too. And I see all these groups getting involved, but if they're not working together, I want to get the biggest bang for our buck. I know it's only $10,000 or whatever, but that's a lot of money, because I just did a quick research, and since 2014, we've spent over $70,000 from this municipality.
Yeah.
So you do a good job. I want to thank you, Linda and Randy, for this. You know, I guess originally I was one of the ones that said, why are we spending this money? It seems everybody's for themselves, and we can't compete with, we don't have the dollars to compete with Belleville and everybody else when they can offer big incentives, right? But I guess the takeaway from me is we have 2 really good representatives on this committee. And if you're not at the table playing the game, then something could happen. And I'm hoping in the future they do amalgamate and they try and have it as 1 or 2 groups going forward instead of all over. So.
Yeah, and Councillor Booth, I agree with you. Yes, there is. So the Ontario Health Team Northumberland has been put together and has been in place since prior to COVID. So actually, one of their main priorities right now is to look at the whole recruitment side. And yes, they did go to County Council, and they actually asked County Council for some funding. And through that went through the Health Committee, and it went to the County Council, I believe, Mayor Logal, and I believe the county turned it down. The initial funding, or they said it had to go back to the Health Committee. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, it went back to the Health Committee. So I personally, I totally agree with you in the fact that we should be collaborating together. I keep telling Councillor Barber here, I want to retire for the 3rd time. Because I think in my mind, this is, we've got to look at healthcare for all of Northumberland County. You know, it's really important that we're all working together. We're not competing against each other, but what's best for our community, and how do we work together in healthcare, and how can we bring those services to the people? I think that's so important. And having been at the United Way and know the challenges of people living in rural areas, how do we bring those services to our rural areas as well? So to me, working together with the OHTN, taking this on, which I think was very important, and working with them as they move forward. And the Andrea Goff, who is their executive lead, did tell me that they will be coming to talk to you at some point. But I think it's very important that we're all at the table, that we're all working together. It's like I was excited over this Eastern Ontario Alliance was important too, to think that we're all going to talk to each other and what's happening and how can we support each other, because it is a crisis across the province. And we definitely, have to find a way to recruit these docs. And the sad part is people are going to medical school out of province. They're going overseas to get educated. I mean, we have doctors living in our community that can't get they can't get what they need, certification, because they all have to go through their education again to get it. And that to me is just ridiculous. So, there's got to be a way that some of this can be resolved.
And I guess my last comment would be, as a municipal councillor, and you can understand this too, Randy, it's frustrating that we are actually the municipalities looking at this. This is supposed to be a federal and provincial thing. The federal government's supposed to funnel that money to the province, and Mr. Ford is supposed to make sure. And we're spending, it's almost like you're getting double or triple taxed, that
Yeah.
we're spending our hard-earned municipal dollars. And after our budget session this morning, where we're stretched thin already, now we're being asked to contribute to find doctors when that's really not our job.
Right.
But I appreciate everything that you've done, and thank you. I know it's a big problem for all of us that we want to have a doctor, right? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just
Mayor?
quickly, through you, Mayor Lobel, thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to hear about the Eastern group that has started up. And listening to you,
Mhm.
I do agree with my doctor. There is a group, they're in a group. We even have after hours. So
Yes.
I
Mhm.
really applaud the doctors that are getting their business in order. That's what they want to do. There aren't any doctors in Cobourg, are there, that are working independently, that are not in a practice?
No,
Or, I mean,
all the
that's-
doctors are definitely in a family health organization. They might have their own office. Dr. Webster has her own office on Division Street. Yeah, but she belongs to a family health organization. And you'll find in Port Hope, the doctors are spread around a bit, but they all belong to the Ganaraska FO. So yeah, they all want to be in a FO because it helps them in regards to covering administration costs and such, right? So even if they have their own nurse practitioner, that comes out of the doctors. Yeah, it's not paid through. I know I had a new I had a doctor comment on that. Oh, you realize OHIP doesn't pay the nurse practitioner? I said, no, I realize that. Well, unfortunately, comes out of the funds that you get paid. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty sad when you think of it. You go see your doctor and they get paid about $40 for seeing you. So
The other thing when I'm listening to Mayor Local, that I'm listening to you, all these incentives these doctors are getting to come here, and we aren't giving $150,000. Do you have private funding coming from individuals in our municipality? Or if they did a one-of, then they're going to start a whole ball going. So, I mean, that entitlement thing, I haven't sat and listened to the plight of a young doctor coming in.
mhm.
And I just would like to think that we aren't nurturing an entitlement. The other thing is, you mentioned 34 doctors total that have come.
About 30,
30.
Yeah.
Have you lost some of them? As soon as they can get out of here, they get out?
No, actually, over all those years, I think we've lost about 3 doctors that have come in. So we've actually been to the plus, which is great. We
And,
haven't had that.
The other thing, just one more comment. I'm not sure what the Grafton Pharmacy is doing, but they have a doctor coming in 1 day a week.
Oh, that's
And
great.
I didn't get a chance to see what program that doctor is working in or anything about
Mhm.
it. But I don't ever expect to have a doctor in AH. I would rather
Mhm.
see them be part of the health team.
So there's a couple of things that's happening. That's one thing the pharmacies are trying to now recruit doctors to be a partner with them. So we're seeing that. So in Cobourg, there will be a doctor opening up a walk-in clinic at the IDA pharmacy. which is in the No Frills Plaza in Coburg. And that doctor is looking to run 5 days a week as a walk-in clinic there and looking to serve unrostered patients. So that is happening. And of course, the mayor of Port Hope was able to get the walk-in clinic opened in the municipality of Port Hope. And that's running a couple of days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, depending on the availability of doctors. Now, it's interesting, the doctors are just in the midst of negotiating with the OMA a new contract I read the other day. And but right now, if you go to a walk-in clinic and see a doctor, that's not your doctor gets dinged for you going to the walk-in clinic. So that's one of the issues when it comes to recruiting doctors to do walk-in clinics, because they don't want to ding their fellow peers. So the doctor that's coming in, that's going to be in the pharmacy in the IDA, actually is coming from the north, is coming from Sudbury. He bought a house here. His son has lived here and his wife for 10 years, and they've decided to open a walk-in clinic here. So, which is great. He's retired.
Thank you.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be very brief. You bring up a very important point and one of great discussion that we've had, particularly recently, and that is how to look at some private funding or whatever, such things as houses, such things, being able to move into a house for a year rent-free or something along those lines with a local developer, perhaps the childcare services, which is a separate issue, of course, amongst all of us, but be trying to arrange something like that ahead of time. Those kinds of things, which are above and beyond basically what we're sitting for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, you have any comments?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, just a couple of things. I also, to broaden on what Deputy Mayor Stover talked about is like, do we, as a county, do we have buildings that we could partner in, making it turnkey for people to come into along? Because I understand about, some of the doctors are getting free rent for 5 years or so in their facilities and stuff, and getting all these other benefits are coming in. So it's great to hear you kind of update us and all that stuff. And it was one thing that I always wanted to, is to have this group come in and do presentations. So we kind of knew exactly what was going on and your frustrations and the hills that you had to climb to make this happen. But the other one was, yes, we probably do have some residents that could help donate to make some things happen, and looking outside the box and doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, because it is a challenge. My doctor retired, so I have a new one, but I was lucky enough that he took over the other practitioner. But so, moving forward, I see it's something that's definitely a need for the township and the county, and hopefully we can work together and try to make it happen. But like, is there an avenue for natural pathologists in this whole thing also? Is that part of your recruiting, or is it?
No, we really only recruit for family physicians at this
Yeah.
time. But as I said, Councillor Ainsworth, I mean, as the Ontario Health Team looks at the whole issue of recruitment, it'll be interesting to see, because they want to recruit a variety of different people. So, I think all those doors are going to open.
Yeah, so I would say for me, if we could get together with the people that are involved and see if we could find a building and make it turnkey, that would be more, and they would be working together as a group and coming into a new facility or a renovated facility.
Well, always a possibility.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Barber, I have a question for you. You met with the OM. And was there any discussion about, and I know Linda brought it up real briefly, but all the doctors that have moved here but aren't recognized as doctors, did that come up in your discussions with them?
It certainly did, and a good point, Your Worship. We all know the problems that we've got. What I was trying to bring to them was the kind of solutions we were looking at here in West Northumberland, to overstep those particular things. But it's very interesting what you say, that there's all of these doctors. I heard a figure, believe it or not, of 13,000. Now, I'm not sure how close that is, but of doctors from other countries that are in Canada that cannot practice. And that's the OMAs of this country that are stopping them one way or another, are making it so difficult for them to be able to go back into it. And so this is, you bring up a very good point, and it's another one of this catches that gets in the way of everything. You know, we going through, I've watched Linda go through this particular recruitment we're going through now, and it's literally taken 7 or 8 months of hand holding and letters being signed and sitting out there for months at a time before they come back. These kinds of things that are frustrating us most definitely, but we have to be at the table. That's the key thing.
Yeah. Linda's does such a great job in some of her other things over the years, like Ed's House and all of that different type stuff, that you've got an expert here going out there and offering them services and trying to collect money and this, that, and the other type thing. So we know how good she works. Any further questions, or can we read this and then go to debate?
Yep. I'm ready to vote.
I'm going to read the recommendation then. The council directs staff to.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Okay. It is recommended to the council of the township of Allen McCullough enact as follows: that the presentation made by Linda Kay and Randy Barber regarding physician recruitment in Northumberland County be received for information. Got to get a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor O'Neill, seconded by Councilor Booth. Any further discussions? All in favor? The motion's carried. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming all the way to Grafton, and have a safe trip home.
Spend some
Thank
money
you.
when you're here. Oh, okay. That's good.
Okay. We're going to move on to administrative reports, and we have 6-1 physician recruitment. CLK 2024-26 physician recruitment, September 17th, 2024. And the recommendation is that council receive report CLK 2024-26 physician recruitment for information, and that council direct staff to either, number one, inform participating municipalities that the township of Allen McCullough would like to cancel its notice to withdraw for the West Northumberland Physician Recruitment and Retention Board and remain an active participant member of the board, or number two, confirm with participating members, municipalities of the township of Allen McCullough's intent to withdraw from the West Northumberland Physician Recruitment and Retention Board. So we're going to open it up for, after we get mover and seconder, we'll open it up for discussions.
I'll move.
What do you got to tell me what you're going to move?
Well, I thought we were putting it on the floor for discussion.
No, we got a motion.
Oh,
One, two. Yeah,
So through your Mayor Logel, so the mover will have to specify which of the two options they'd like to put on the floor for discussion. So it's either to cancel notice to withdraw and remain an active participant, or it's to confirm that we're going to stick with our intention to withdraw from the board. So whoever is to move it has to specify which of those two options they'd like to discuss.
Mary Catherine,
I would like to move option 1, please.
thank you. Did I get a seconder for that? Seconded by Joan, Deputy Mayor Silver. Any discussions? Well, I have a couple, and I didn't bring it up when the presentation was on because it wasn't a question, but just a couple of comments. The $9,000 is an awful lot of money. I agree with Councillor Booth that it's not our responsibility. However, we do have residents that go to Cobourg, go to Port Hope, go wherever, and some go, and these are personal things. They go to Belleville or go to Oshawa for their family physicians.
Yeah.
And that's too far. And it's families that are doing that, not just individuals, but families. And they have to take off school to go see their physician. That's not right that they have to travel that far. And my other comment would be, I know it's $9,000. But with the population of 7,500, that's about $1.25 per resident. And to me, we have no choice but to go ahead and stick with what Mary Catherine has proposed in option 1. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
One of the things I wanted to ask and I didn't was the increase for 2025, what the increase would be.
Um,
Go ahead.
the board hasn't started and brought forward their proposed budget yet, so we would have to wait for that. Deputy Mayor.
Further discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Booth.
I was one of the original ones way back that fought this and wanted to bring it back, but after listening to Linda and Randy's explanation and the two good people that we have on the committee that hopefully can contribute to it, I'm of the feeling now that if you're not at the table, you know, and at least get to speak or whatever, and I'm listening to what the two made the comment, and hopefully next year that we can get all these groups together, that they're all working together so that our $9,000 or $10,000 or $12,000, whatever it's going to be, is really making a difference instead of having 5 different groups all on their own. So I will vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Through you, Mayor. So just to clarify, so we had to give them a year's notice, so this will go back and come out of 2025 budget. We don't have to find that $10,000 out of 2024.
We paid for 2024.
Okay,
And if we were to join again, we will have to pay for 2025, just like we.
so it'll be on the 2025 budget.
That's correct.
Okay.
Should be on the 25 budget.
If we vote.
Any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Mayor Catherine.
Just to make note that when we did the strategic plan survey, it came up as a high, something people wanted to see in this area. So I think we do, that's what our residents want. We are doing what they want.
Good point. Further discussion? All in favor of option 2?
Option 1.
Option 1.
Were you just seeing through
Have a
it?
seat.
I had my hand back there.
All in favor of option 1? That motion is carried unanimously. Go ahead, Mary Catherine.
I may be overstepping a little bit, but I think it would be good if we sent a message from here to to you as our county rep that we really would like to see support of the OHTN for county-wide recruitment strategy.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
Sorry, Councillor Neal, is that a motion? We would need a
I'm
motion to
not
action
sure.
anything.
I'm not sure. Do we want it as a motion, Mayor Logal, or just as information?
My understanding of it is coming up tomorrow. And my personal opinion on it is that we should do that. So I will be voting in favor.
Thank you. You have my support for that.
Okay. Moving on. Next one, we have item 6.2 from the Finance Department about a temporary support staff. CAO 2024-20 Financial Department temporary support staff for this meeting. Dave, do you want to make any comments? Okay. I'll read the resolution then. The council received report CAO 2024-20 from the Finance Department regarding temporary support staff for information. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. Comments? Go ahead, Mayor Catherine.
I do struggle with this one. I know it's a necessary short-term fix, but I really believe that having a treasurer, a full-time treasurer in place is essential. Whether we can pursue interim treasurer opportunities or speed up the process of the job applications, but we also need HR to be in place and have a full-time person there. We've got that in our strategic plan, or in our draft strategic plan, to build a thriving, inclusive and collaborative workplace. And we need our HR person to be able to focus and do that. So I would like to see that position filled as soon as possible.
Thank you. Other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Booth.
Through you, your worship. I sort of agree with what you're talking about, Councillor O'Neill. I'm just a little concerned. It says recruitment for a treasurer will resume in 2025. So it almost sounds to me like we've sort of given up, and I don't know, maybe Dave, you could report. It says we're going to conduct a compensation review. Do you find we're not getting the qualified candidates because we're not paying enough? Is it the pay you think is the obstacle here, or is it just I mean, I think all around municipalities, it's tough to find a treasurer, right? Just a comment.
Through your mayor to Councillor Booth and the rest of the council. So yes, it is a challenge. Has been a challenge. It's been identified on several levels. Many municipalities are challenged with getting a treasurer. The suggestion that's presented here is that we need to get focusing on the 2025 budget. Our goal is to have this done by Christmas, to be prepared for the 2025 year. We are scheduled for a salary review in 2025. That also needs to be done. So this is merely a stepping stone, and also to remain in line with our new strategic plan for the next few years, and so that we can identify and prepare the appropriate funds for this position on what they should be if they need to be increased. But as you are aware, this council went through and staff went through a significant process to review the job descriptions that exist within the township, and to also review the changes or the non-changes on the pay grid. And council had a very respective wish with respect to that. So staff are proceeding forward, respecting council's wishes, respecting the pay grid that exists right now, and putting together and in place the appropriate steps that we should be doing, so that we can then be in a position, if the pay is to be increased for a treasurer's position, that it is aligned with what it should be, and that we're following the appropriate processes.
Okay, thank you.
Your Catherine?
Well, following up from our previous, the doctors, it wasn't the pay, it's not the bribes that's working, it's these other working conditions that are the key drivers of where doctors are choosing to locate, is they're going into a workplace. Anyway, what are the other factors that might be influencing where or why a treasurer chooses to work in a certain location?
Through you, Mayor Lobo, I don't have that answer for you today.
Worth thinking about.
Just a quick comment. I tend to agree with both councillors that we need to get moving on this as quickly as we possibly can, because the township does need a full-time treasurer as well as a full-time industrial relations person. And I got to thank staff that are doing all the extra work to keep us afloat, but it can't go on forever. And I guess if you're saying that the real problem is the, and I'm not saying that you're not, I understand what you're saying, that it's the pay grids or something like that, then that's got to be a top priority for 2025. So we are 6 months from now still trying to find someone to take office now. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Logo, just following up on the pay grid for a treasurer and heading into the 2025 budget season, so to speak. Would that be any numbers that would be coming in the next couple of months as we go into the budget, to see if that is would be something that could be available to us? I just off the top of my head, I'm just looking at.
Eric?
Yeah, so we're in the budget, so we're budgeting appropriately for that position.
Well, we'll be able to do it prior to completion. And add that here for that.
Okay,
Not go in what we are doing that now,
currently.
and we can make and that from previous.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further questions? Go ahead, Mike.
For you, Mayor. This is actually a compliment for Erin because she's been holding this position. I wonder, should we be looking at Erin and filling her position? Would that be easier? Would Erin need more training if that was something that she was thinking of moving up to?
Counselor.
I think we're getting off. the
Well,
subject.
I'm just saying, like, I'm looking at outside the box here a bit.
I know, but that's not part of it.
Okay.
And we also need to refer to the position, not a person.
Any further discussion?
Okay.
All in favor? Motion's carried. I'm going on to number 7. Confirming bylaw. Bylaw 65-2024, confirming bylaw for a special council session for September the 17th, 2024. It is recommended the council of the corporation of the township of Allen Coldman enact as follows: that bylaw 65-2024 being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the special council meeting held on September 17th, 2024, and to authorize its execution be given first, second, and third reading and finally pass the 17th day of September 2024. Can I get moving in a second? Moved by Deputy Mayor Silver and seconded by Councillor Booth. All in favor? Motion's carried. Motion to adjourn, that the special council meeting held on September 17th, 2024 be adjourned at 11:42 p.m. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Booth. Seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.